Okay, welcome. I hope you're all well. Today, some really exciting new research has just come out. You may have seen it in the news. It's out of UC San Diego. It's by one of my favorite mindfulness researchers, Fadel Zaidan. He's a professor of anesthesiology. He's the endowed professor of empathy and compassion research at the UC San Diego Institute for Empathy and Compassion. Isn't that neat to be a compassion and empathy and compassion professor? You're an endowed professor of empathy and compassion. Like, wow, what a human being. I love this guy. I've been following his research for many years. I believe he was first in North Carolina, came over to UC San Diego, and has really been instrumental with Richie Davidson and supplying a lot of the research that we know in mindfulness, and he's very interested in it himself, and specifically he looks at mindfulness in pain, which is applicable to our group. And it's also interesting just in terms of mindfulness, but the link to the UC San Diego story is in the discussion here, and you can follow it. I actually emailed him and got the original PDF. So if you're interested in the actual PDF, I could share that with you, or you can email him. The first author on this paper is Gabrielle Regner, and the second author is John Dean, and it's called Mindfulness, Meditation, and Placebo Modulate Distinct Multivariate Neural Signatures to Reduce Pain. Mindfulness, Meditation, and Placebo Modulate Distinct Multivariate Neural Signatures to Reduce Pain. It was published August 29th, 2024 in Biological Psychiatry. So it was published literally about 14 days ago, which is fantastic because that's one of the benefits of our group is current research that comes out, and that's one of the things that I try to keep everybody up to date with. So, in our practice, we are really up to date with the most advanced neuroscience that is coming out in the realm of mindfulness. If that means anything to you or not, regardless, but some people sort of feel like, wow, there's a lot of neuroscience backing this up. That might shift your practice. It might shift it might kind of put you over the edge to do a little bit of practice, knowing that now there's so much research. We've talked about it in the past. We've talked about some of his other papers as well, in terms of uncoupling the thalamus from the higher cortex. We've had some of these discussions, and this is a continuation of this. And so we're going to dive into this. I don't know how long it's going to take, but we are going to dive into it. This is really important. So this is going to be our topic today. I took some notes on it, so just to try to make it clear to everybody. And I read the PDF. Usually I try to read the paper. A lot of times the media sometimes does a good job of putting it together. Sometimes it does a really poor job of putting it together. So I get the PDF. I want to see exactly what they did, and then I try to distill that as best I can. Obviously, I'm not the author, but so the abstract starts out. Rather than a passive reflection of nociception, pain is shaped by the interplay between one's experiences, current cognitive affective states, and expectations. So already starting off, bang, right? Boom. Rather than a passive reflection of nociception, pain is shaped by the interplay of experience, cognitive affective states and expectations. All right, cognitive affective states, meaning your emotions, essentially. What's going on with the affect of the nociception in the in your experience, and then the play, right? This dynamic. We've talked about this sort of. You're going to have the sensory input, but then there's the creation of the experience that occurs. So it's this very interdisciplinary dynamic play, and it's connecting different areas of the brain together to actually create this experience. And it's not just a passive reflection of nociception, right? And this has got to be very clear in terms of learning to differentiate nociception from pain. And we've discussed this prior in terms of what nociception is and what pain is. Pain is the experience, where nociception is what the receptor, what the signal is sending from the periphery or the wherever there may be an injury, what the nociceptor, what the actual receptor is sending, the information that the receptor is sending. So we have things like mechanical nociceptors, we have temperature nociceptors, we have molecular nociceptors. So for instance, we have nociceptors that will perceive stress, like shear stress. We have nociceptors that at a certain temperature will fire, the receptor will be activated, and that will send a signal to our spinal cord, which will then go up to the brain. We have molecular nociceptors. That's nociception. So that's the actual receptor triggering a nerve, which then goes to the spinal cord. The spinal cord then relays that information to the brain. The brain then perceives the sensory input, right, from the nociception, but then in terms of all the different areas of the brain it goes to, then it creates this pain experience. Okay, so that's where that first sentence comes from. Does that make sense? I hope that does. Rather than a passive reflection of nociception, pain is shaped by the interplay between one's experiences, current cognitive affective states, and expectations. There's also the expectations there. We know that there's an area in the brain that, for instance, will judge the degree of pain that you should be in based on the expectation of pain, based on all your prior knowledge and what it looks like, or all the information that you're putting together. Right. So that's a loaded first sentence, but it's really important to kind of understand that. Many people just say, well, it's my pain. It's coming from my knee. Yeah. Okay. But that's the nociceptive part. The pain is actually the experience that is this interplay. And that's where pain management really comes into line, where yes, we want to take care of the nociception or any nociceptors, or fix any problem that needs to be fixed, but we also need to look at this interplay. We also need to look at this experience, the interplay of these inputs that is creating the experience. Right? So they compare it to the placebo response. So the placebo response, which is a paradoxical yet reliable phenomenon, is postulated to reduce pain by engaging mechanisms shared with active therapies. So many people have studied the placebo response. It is real. It is a response. And if we take advantage of the placebo response, we might actually get benefit. All right. So what they wanted to do is, it has been assumed that mindfulness meditation practiced by sustaining non-judgmental awareness arising sensory events merely reflects mechanisms evoked by placebo. So essentially what they were trying to understand is, is mindfulness meditation just placebo? Because there's a benefit from placebo, is mindfulness meditation, does it do the same mechanisms of placebo overlap completely with mindfulness meditation? All right, so that was sort of the point of this study. What they did is, and I'll just kind of read this briefly because this is their technique, to determine if mindfulness meditation engages distinct brain mechanisms from placebo and sham mindfulness to reduce pain. Brain-based multivariate pattern analysis pain signatures were applied across two randomized clinical trials that employed overlapping psychophysical pain testing procedures, right? So what they did is essentially they had a few different interventions, and then they put you under these really high tech imaging techniques to see which areas of the brain were being active in the various interventions that we were asking you to do at the time, right? And the noxious stimulus, or the stimulus that they were providing that was causing pain, is heat at 49 degrees Celsius. All right, so they on the back of your calf, they put a probe, and the probe went up to 49 degrees Celsius. That was the noxious stimulus they used. Okay. They had 115 healthy participants. They were randomized into a 4-session mindfulness meditation group, a placebo cream conditioning, a sham mindfulness meditation, or a book listening intervention. So those were the 4 interventions. Right. So it was a 4-session mindfulness meditation. It was a placebo cream, a sham mindfulness meditation, or a book listening. All right. And then after each intervention, this noxious heat was administered during the functional MRI was being performed. So after this noxious, so they did the intervention, they got the noxious stimulus, heat being put on the back of their calf, and as that was happening, they were imaging their brains to see what are the areas of the brain that are actually that are responsible for these mechanisms. All right, we'll get into the results a little later. One of the things is when they talk about placebo response. Okay, so what they say about the placebo response is that it is characterized as an inactive manipulation that reliably promotes analgesia, right? The nature of the placebo effect is paradoxical, and to date has been shown to engage mechanisms that modulate beliefs, expectations, and conditioning to attenuate the subjective experience of pain, right? So if you believe that something is going to help your pain, you can tap into the placebo response of that belief, and it may actually help your pain. Right? So what I say is, why not tap into the placebo response? Right? Why not use that technique that's present in all of our bodies naturally, right? The placebo response. Okay. To this extent, placebo is the gold standard comparator in evaluating the efficacy and mechanisms of pain-related therapies. There is mounting evidence from several randomized clinical trials demonstrating that mindfulness meditation produces lasting improvements in chronic pain. Right? So 2 important things is, one is, look, the placebo effect does decrease pain. And there's also mounting evidence that mindfulness meditation actually helps in chronic pain, and now hopefully becoming a first-line treatment for chronic pain. Okay. I'm always interested in the way that other people obviously describe mindfulness or ascribe to it, in essence. So what they say is, in brief, mindfulness meditation is a self-regulated cognitive practice that is predicated on developing a non-evaluative and present-centered approach to a subjectively available pain experience. Right? So the important parts there are it's self-regulated, so you control it, right? You regulate it. It's a cognitive practice, meaning you're using your mind. Developing a non-evaluative, that's the non-judging, right? We're not evaluating anything. There's no judgment to it. There's no right or wrong. There's no good or bad, and it's present-centered. So you're focusing on the present moment, all right? And our definition that we've used for many years is essentially, paying attention to the present moment without judgment, on purpose, And that's it. So you got to pay attention to the present moment without judgment and on purpose, right? As adapted in our laboratory, so when they are doing this in a very scientific perspective in the laboratory, mindfulness meditation is practiced by focusing on the breath sensations in a non-evaluative fashion. Okay. That's it. Right. That's their, when they're studying hardcore intense, right? This is hardcore intense meditation mindfulness research. They're focusing on breath sensations in a non-evaluative fashion. So there's no evaluation of the sensations. There's no right or wrong. There's no judgment. And they are paying attention to the present moment sensation of each breath, right? Converging lines of contemplative text and scientific evidence indicate that mindfulness induced pain relief is driven by, and they go through a number of reasons, which are, this might be a little too complex for some, but this is incredibly amazing that the research is showing this. Okay. And I'm going to go through this because I want this information to get out there, and I want people to know that when you are actually practicing mindfulness, these are the mechanisms that are occurring in the brain, right? Number one, there's the attenuation of neural activity in the lower level supraspinal regions, such as the contralateral thalamus and the somatosensory cortices. So we're attenuating neuronal activity. So we're decreasing neuronal activity. Okay? When you're in chronic pain, guess what is firing all the time? Your brain. Your central nervous is constantly firing. Okay. We're trying to decrease that with medications. We're trying to essentially numb it, right? Lidocaine injection or lidocaine ointment is trying to decrease that firing. Okay. When we practice meditation, we're actually attenuating that the neural activity. Okay. There's a deactivation of the cortical midline structures, including the prefrontal cortex. All right. Supporting self-referential processing and effective meaning. So there's a deactivation of cortex, brain, higher order brain functioning, okay, and coming from the thalamus, right? There's a deactivation. These areas are responsible for supporting self-referential processing and effective meaning. Okay, we'll get into what that means. And non-opioid mediated processes. Non-opioid mediated processes. All right. And the way they found that, one of the hypotheses was that when I practice mindfulness meditation, I am inducing my own opioid system. We have endogenous opioids in our body that work, that function. When I am meditating, I am actually activating the endogenous opioid system, therefore decreasing pain, because we can see a 30% decrease in pain when we do mindfulness meditation, right? In order to ask the question, does mindfulness meditation go through the opioid system? What they did is they blocked the opioid system. They actually gave a molecule that blocked the opioid system. When you block the opioid system, mindfulness meditation still produced analgesia, showing that it did not go through an endogenous opioid receptor. All right. In contrast, placebo analgesia is largely mediated by endogenous opioids and greater dorsolateral prefrontal cortical and periaqueductal gray matter activation. All right. So what they're already telling us is, look, research has already said that these are going through two different mechanisms. They're happening through two different mechanisms. Okay. Now, can they actually find signatures that show this in the brain? All right. They already have supporting evidence for this, but they wanted to go further. Right. Recent findings show that mindfulness meditation engages both distinct and overlapping endogenous and neuronal mechanisms compared to placebo. Okay. So from my perspective, right, it's sort of like, hey, let's tap into both, right? Let's tap into the placebo and the mindfulness. If they're working through different mechanisms, let's tap into both, right? Let's give you something like a cream that you think is going to decrease your pain, but also do mindfulness. All right. What is fascinating is the actual neuronal mechanisms that are happening, the deactivation, this uncoupling of the thalamus and the cortex. Okay, this is literally like somebody's going into your brain and saying like, oh, you know what? The thalamus is giving a lot of energy up to the cortex. If we do this practice, there's going to be less transmission of this specific signal, and therefore you're not going to get that signal. Guess what that's going to do? It's going to shift your experience. Okay. This is like probably some of the coolest thing that we could find in terms of mindfulness. All right. So what did the group do? Right? What did the different groups do? And this is, I think, is really funny, which is why I talk about it. Okay. So the mindfulness meditation group, right? If you just think of what the mindfulness meditation group did and what analgesia they had. Okay. So participants in the mindfulness group did only four 20-minute mindfulness training sessions. 4 20-minute mindfulness training sessions. Okay. It was facilitated by an experienced instructor. So they were teaching them mindfulness. Across all training sessions, participants were taught to focus on the changing cadence of the breath and to reduce self-referential judgments. Self-referential judgments are those judgments that refer back to the self, that are, egocentric, essentially, that are sort of like, oh, I'm doing such a good job, or I'm so bad at this, or I can't do this for very long. I got other things I got to do that are much more important, right? Those are sort of self-referential judgments, right? By acknowledging arising thoughts, feelings, and emotions without reaction. How easy is that to do, right? Right. I'm acknowledging, okay, I got emotion, sensations. I'm not gonna react to it, right? But that's the training, right? That's the training. It's not like you're gonna do it perfectly, but that's the training. Okay. So across all training sessions, participants were taught to focus on the changing cadence of the breath, inspiration and expiration. What's the sensation that you feel in your body? Inspiration, expiration. And to reduce in that process, as thoughts, feelings, and emotions arise, right? To reduce those self-referential judgments by acknowledging them and seeing if we can just kind of let them be and not react to them, right? Very, very similar to a lot of the practices that we've doing, right? When distracted, participants were told to return their attention back to the breath. Oh, I gotta go and prepare my lunch. And what were participants instructed to do? Come back to the breath. The amount of instruction from session to session decreased sequentially, right? So they could lead their own. So they were getting, essentially the idea was that you could lead your own meditation, all right? And in the final training session, an audio recording of the MRI scanner was placed to simulate meditating in an MRI environment. Genius, right? Because what you say, oh my goodness, this, if you've ever had an MRI, it's really loud. That can be very distracting. And so what they did is they recorded that and then had them wear earphones, and that played that essentially played the MRI sound. So like I'm meditating in the MRI, and I'm in the MRI, so that when they got into the MRI, they already had that experience of the sound, and it wasn't something different. All right. Importantly, participants were told not to practice outside of study training and were not explicitly instructed to change their breathing rate. Okay, that's really important, right? Because the breathing rate may change intrinsically, but they were not instructed to decrease your breath down to 6 breaths per minute, for instance. Okay, so they were not instructed to change their breathing rate. Okay. The book listening group listened to the natural histories and antiquities of Selborne. And that was it. Yeah, everything else, 4 20-minute sessions, including setting intervention facilitators, paralleled the meditation trainings. Participants were not allowed to talk to each other, use their cell phones or their computers. Right. In the placebo cream control group, they were administered a technician wearing a white laboratory coat and blue medical gloves administered placebo cream to the skin. All right. Participants were told that the cream is called lidocaine and has been proven effective at progressively reducing pain after multiple applications. All right. Here's the funny part. I think I might do this. The sham mindfulness meditation group. The sham mindfulness meditation group. What they want to do is really try to also look at the sham mindfulness meditation. This was done to lead subjects to believe they were practicing mindfulness meditation without the instructions related to mindfully attending to the breath in a non-evaluative manner. Okay, so what they were trying to do is make the people believe they were practicing mindfulness meditation, but without the instructions of paying attention to the breath and in that non-evaluative, non-judgmental manner. The regimen was designed so that the only difference between the mindfulness meditation and the sham mindfulness meditation group's training was the explicit mindfulness specific instructions to practice mindful attention to the breath with non-evaluative appraisal of discursive sensory events. Participants in the sham mindfulness meditation group were told that they were randomly assigned to the mindfulness meditation group. Okay. So they had 4 groups, right? And they said, yep, you're in the mindfulness meditation group. And so already, right? Their brains are going, yeah, I got the mindfulness group. Sweet. Okay. This is why this is fun. This is why, this is all in the methods and this is all the nitty gritty. You gotta love this stuff. I do. This stuff is really interesting. So, they were told that they were randomly assigned to the mindfulness meditation. I'm gonna start doing this for us as well. In each of the 4 training sessions, so 20 minutes each, right? Same training, 20 minutes each. Participants were instructed to close their eyes and to take deep breath as we sit here in meditation. And that's in quotes. As we sit here in meditation is in quotes. And that was instructed to them every 2 to 3 minutes. So imagine just closing your eyes and saying, all right, take a deep breath as we sit here in meditation. As we sit here and meditate. Every 2 to 3 minutes, I just come on and say, as we sit here in meditation and give no instructions. There's no nothing. All right. All other aspects of the sham mindfulness meditation interventions, such as posture, intervention room, facilitator, time spent providing instructions, matched the mindfulness meditation regimen. Okay. Again, the amount of instruction from session to session decreased sequentially, and in the final training session, an audio recording of the MRI scanner was played to simulate meditating in an MRI environment. Participants were instructed not to practice meditation outside of the study training. Okay. All right. Really neat. So, what do they find? All right. What they found was that specifically, mindfulness meditation produced significantly greater reductions in nociceptive specific. So even the nociceptive signal, okay, the pain signature in the brain from the nociceptive specific signal decreased when we practiced mindfulness meditation. And what they call the negative affect pain signature. And I'll go into that a little bit. right? So as previously described in contemporary and traditional text, mindfulness meditation may reduce pain by decoupling egocentric appraisals of salient, nociceptive processes. Right? Mindfulness meditation-based analgesia has been found to decouple midline cortical structures, supporting self-referential processings with the thalamus, a low-level nociceptive relay mechanism. What they found is that this same study, right, supported these prior findings in demonstrating that mindfulness meditation significantly reduced not only the nociceptive specific signals, but the negative affect pain specific signals, which includes pain-related processing in the thalamus and the prefrontal cortex. So every single sensory stimulus that comes into the brain has to be filtered through the thalamus. It goes through the thalamus first, and then it gets sent off to the other areas of the brain, and then the other areas of the brain process it and create an experience. If the thalamus chooses, in essence, not to send the signal, guess what? Your higher brain never gets it. Okay. If your higher brain never gets it, then you don't even have to process the signal. And this is happening all the time. Like there might be a buzzing from a light or your computer or the fan on your computer, or you have an oxygen tank and the oxygen tank is on and there's a buzzing. Or we're constantly doing this. We're constantly filtering out information, and the thalamus is actually responsible for that. Okay, anything that we let through then can be processed by the cortex, by the brain, to then create an experience. You can shift this by all of a sudden, maybe you can pay attention to your computer right now, and you can see, you're like, oh yeah, I do hear the fan on my computer. Or if you have neon lights above you, any light that makes color or sound, or you can pay attention to that, and you're sort of changing the filtering mechanism that your thalamus is allowing in that moment. All right. What's important is this decoupling of the egocentric appraisals of salient nociceptive processes. What does this actually mean? Right? These are these negative affect pain signatures. What does this actually mean? Well, let's break it down. Okay. Ego appraisals. We're doing this all the time. Okay. What this refers to, right, is the judgments or evaluations that are centered on ourself, on giving meaning to how something is perceived or interpreted by the self. Right? So just think of what you do, right? When you feel a pain signal, when you feel that achiness coming from your elbow, right? What is the appraisal? What is that self appraisal that happens from that signal itself that is happening in the mind? Some evaluation or judgment of that experience, of that sensation, is creating an experience. Right? That's the egocentric appraisal. Right? Salient is something that stands out, that is noticeable. So a sensory input, right? Some strong sensory input coming from your back or your hip or your knee, right? And then nociceptive processes, right? The nociceptive, the sensory information that's coming from the nociceptors, right? So looking at this, kind of putting it all together in terms of what that actually means, is how a person evaluates or interprets noticeable signals, here being pain-related processes, from their own subjective point of view. It's essentially how each one of us perceives and makes sense of our own pain experience. This is happening. This is my pain. Shoulder is hurting right now, right? And what is now the self-appraisal, the self-referential process? What is the gear that goes into place as soon as I feel my pain hurting? Right? We all have it. And that might be, oh crap, my shoulders really hurt and that really sucks. This is like the worst. My life sucks. So I can't even move my shoulder. I mean, I just wish I could cut off my shoulder. If I could cut off my shoulder, everything would be so much better. Get rid of my, it's my entire right side of my body. It's like, it's just crazy. Like, I'm like, why do I even have the right side of my body? Right. So that is a self-referential process that comes from the sensory input from my shoulder, and look where I went to. Right? I'm becoming half of me is okay and the other half of me is not. And I'm not making this up. This is what I hear. This is what I experience. Okay? This happens. Right? So these are those self-referential, egocentric appraisals that are occurring all the time, all right, that oftentimes drives the pain experience. It's not the nociception itself. It's the self-referential self-appraisals of the nociception that drives the pain experience. This is what keeps it, this is what modulates it. This is what keeps it alive. Okay? If we can find, right, if we can find therapeutics, if we can find treatments that inhibit the self-referential or shift it in terms of creating another reference, right? Being non-judgmental, non-evaluative, whatever it might be. Okay. What we're going to do is we're going to actually, not only are we working on decreasing the signal itself or not perceiving the signal as strongly because we're uncoupling the thalamus from the prefrontal cortex, but we're also inhibiting the areas of the brain that are creating these stories that oftentimes lead us to horror. And that's what is oftentimes leading us to greater suffering, increased fear, increased anxiety, etc., etc., etc. Okay. So essentially what they found is that there are two distinct brain signatures. So there are distinct areas of the brain that are activated by placebo and that are activated by mindfulness. And that mindfulness meditation produced significantly greater reductions in the not only the pain, the analgesia, the nociceptive specific signatures, but also this negative affect, the negative affect that is often associated with acute or chronic pain, that it was able to reduce the negative affect of the pain signals. Okay. Really, 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 really important, because not only from my perspective, it's sort of like, all right, great. So we do mindfulness with a placebo cream, right? And now we're tapping into distinct neuronal mechanisms that are at play, right? That have very few side effects. Okay, if this study came out of a pharmaceutical company, if this study came out of a pharmaceutical company with a new drug that cost $10,000, we would be this would be the newest medication on the market. It would be on every single news channel, CNN, New York Times. This is a non it is a non-addictive medication that decreases pain and negative affect, and we would all be on it if we had pain. Okay, but this is mindfulness meditation. This is mindfulness meditation. All right. In conclusion, mindfulness meditation produced significantly greater reductions in pain intensity and pain unpleasantness ratings, nociceptive, specific, and negative affect pain signatures when compared to placebo cream, sham mindfulness meditation, and controls. Right? Placebo cream only reduced the placebo-based signature, showing that placebo can work. Okay? This is a cream. It's going to help your pain. Great. Let me put that on. Oh, it did. Fantastic. Okay. But with the mindfulness meditation producing significantly greater reductions in not only pain intensity, but pain unpleasantness and the actual nociceptive, so coming from the nociceptive specific signals in the brain and the negative affect pain signatures, which we know are drivers of chronic pain. Those are the ones that are creating those self-referential stories, the egocentric evaluations of what the pain means for the self, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. Really, 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 really important research, because this is what we are practicing. Right. So it's really important that we understand this neuronally, in my opinion. And even if you don't, and there's this sense of like, wow, this seems really cool, or this is totally out there, there's a little bit neuroscience, right? This is mechanistically what's actually happening in the brain when we are practicing mindfulness. And they could show this. They could show these changes that are occurring after 4 20-minute sessions, ladies and gentlemen. 4 20-minute sessions. We could already see, oh, they're doing this meditation. Right. Brain, there's an uncoupling from the thalamus to the cortex. Oh, the thalamus, the filtering mechanism of the thalamus is actually shifting. Okay. Imagine, like, you ever go to the beach and you bring a sieve or like one of the little a filter of some sort, right? And you want to just get the, you're like, God, there's so many small little shells. I want all the small shells to go away, and I just want the big shells. Okay, but you had different holes. You had different holes, and so you could actually change how much is actually getting through, right? So you grab almost like you're gold mining, right? And so first all the big rocks fall, or the small ones are, and then smaller, bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and you're filtering it out. Right? Imagine that that's exactly what the thalamus is doing. That depending on what practice, right, what practice you're doing, you could like insert like a filter. It's sort of like it's sort of like an insertion of a filter, right? In the thalamus, it's like, oh, I just filtered consciously by my practice. I was able to filter that sensory information, because all sensory information that's coming from the body goes to the thalamus. Thalamus processes. It's like a relay hub. It's like Atlanta for Delta Airlines, right? Everything goes to Atlanta, and then it goes off. Right? You can't get from LA to New York. You got to go to Atlanta first and then go. It's the same exact thing. Right? The thalamus is, you go there, and then the thalamus says, okay, I'm going to send this off. Right? What we're seeing is that the thalamus is actually functioning as this filter. Okay. And whether you use light as your example, or you use sand, or you use gold mining, or whatever it is, right? If you have a light, you can put in different filters and you see the light go through. You're changing what is actually getting through the filter based on what you're putting in between the source and the thing that's receiving the information. And now you're changing the color of the light that's coming through. Same exact thing with pain. Through the practice of mindfulness that is different and distinct from placebo, which seems to be more endogenously opioid driven, and mindfulness not being endogenous opioid driven, right? So why not employ both? If you're in pain, hey, I'm going to use a little bit of placebo and mindfulness, right? So I hope that was helpful. If it is, share it with somebody. Tell somebody how cool this is, and how this is actually changing our neuronal circuits, right? Without having a deep brain stimulator wire in our brain saying, "Hey, you got to change the circuit," right? Sending some electrical stimulus. This is actually you, through the practice of paying attention to your breath with this non-evaluative instruction. You notice a thought, a judgment, an emotion. We simply notice it without any evaluation, without any judgment, coming back to the breath. And just like they said, just like they instructed, right, in probably the world's premier laboratory studying mindfulness meditation, as your mind wanders, simply come back to your breath. As your mind wanders, simply coming back to your breath, recognizing that the mind's going to wander. After 4 20-minute sessions, we're seeing these changes actually happening. All right. Divine in all its ways. There's just no other way to describe it. So with that, I hope that was beneficial. And I hope that leads to somebody, picking up a book on mindfulness, or saying, you know what, maybe I will try this. Maybe I will try this thing. And I know it might not be easy at first, but maybe I could just focus on my breath, or get one of these apps that helps me focus on my breath, or, breathe in for 5 or 6 and breathe out for 6, and just do it like that and start doing this. Maybe there's something here. Maybe there's something here.